Shabbat shalom, everyone. It's been a long summer, friends. My kids just went back to school, which is great. Amen. I love my kids very much. I feel like the past couple weeks have been kind of hard. It's been so hot that the kids usually can't go and play outside because they'll melt. So they stay inside. And what happens when they stay inside? They watch screens. Screens. I don't even like saying the word out loud. Yuck. By the way, have you seen what kids are watching these days on the screens? It's terrible. They watch these really horrible videos on YouTube. Not that they're bad or offensive. They're just kind of dumb. There's a guy named Blippi. I don't trust him so much. I walked past one of the iPads the other day, and I was just looking at what they were watching at, and it made me feel bad. It made me feel like I had failed as a parent. And I called my brother, and I said, they're just watching this really dumb content. I'm worried they're going to grow up and be a weirdo or something. What am I going to do? And my brother said, Jonathan, do you remember what we watched growing up? And I said, well, yes. He said, we watched wholesome programming on the television. And he said, we watched Judge Judy. He was right. You guys remember Judge Judy? She's still around. Judge Judy is still doing it. Judge Judy, by the way, she was the perfect TV program to watch when you had to stay home from school, when you were sick, if you had a cold. It was great because on a sick day, you'd be cuddled up on the couch with your blankets, and you'd have your Gatorade, and you'd have your chicken noodle soup. And the first thing that you would watch is The Price is Right with Bob Barker. And even though you were sick, you'd be screaming at the TV, come on, bid, 240, go lower. Just you're doing. And then after Bob, Judge Judy would come on. And I remember as a kid, when Judge Judy would come on, I wouldn't say anything when she was on the screen. I was totally afraid of Judge Judy. I was scared, man. It was like I was worried if I said anything out loud, she would somehow hear me in my living room. So I just watched her in complete silence. But guys, silently, I was rooting for Judge Judy. I'd be thinking, go get him. Go get him, Judge. Get him, Judy, throw the book at him. There'd be a guy, wasn't on there, wouldn't pay his child support. You get him, Judge, get him. Throw the book at him. I don't know if you know this, but Judge Judy is actually a Jewish woman from Brooklyn. No. Yes, you can tell. She's not a Mormon, no. She's actually a real judge. Her name is Judith Scheinlin. In fact, I did some research. She was a New York family court prosecutor for many, many years before getting elected to the bench officially. And I found out that she has been involved in over 20,000 cases over the course of her year. 20,000. I think anyone watching her... Mazel tov. Maybe I should get into that line of work. Anyone watching her can appreciate her chutzpah. Judge Judy does not suffer fools gladly. If you watch her show, you'll see some poor guy trying to explain his case, and he's nervous, and he's trying to recount the details, and he's just rambling, and she will just spout out loud, get to the point! It's amazing to watch. Everyone on that show is just terrified of this tiny Jewish bubby sitting on the bench. I remember there was one episode, and there was a big construction worker, and he was covered in tattoos, huge muscles, and he was giving this speech, trying to talk, and she announced from her podium, she said, "You're wasting my time." Go get him, Judy. Go get him. Go get him. Apparently, I didn't know this until I looked it up. Judge Judy began her TV career in 1996, which means that she has been on the air for over 30 years now. And she still looks the exact same. I guess being unhinged with criminals on TV really Helps with the aging process. Maybe I should try it. I was reading this article about Judge Judy, and she was talking about growing up Jewish in Brooklyn. And she said she remembers that her whole family lived in 2 apartments in the same building. And on Yom Kippur, her grandfather would go to temple. He'd spend there all day, and the grandkids would meet him. And after Ne'ilah, they would walk home with him. And when they got back to their apartment building, Grandpa insisted that he take the stairs back up to the unit rather than taking the elevator. And when she asked him why he did this, he said, quote, "To atone for my sins, to show the judge of the world that I truly repented." This answer apparently profoundly affected the young Judith and her idea of justice, and apparently it inspired her law career and her insistence that repentance must be genuine. I think this story is actually a beautiful way to transition into our Torah portion for this week, because Parshat Shoftim means judges, begins with an important commandment for the people. We start off with, "You shall appoint judges and officers for yourselves." Then later in the same parsha, the Torah continues, and this is a very famous line, "Tzedek, tzedek tirdof." Justice, justice shall you pursue. Now I want to slow down for a moment and talk about that first commandment a little more, because through it, the Torah is telling us something important about human society. When God tells the Jewish people to appoint judges for yourselves, the text is acknowledging that we are a mess. The Torah knows Jews. It knows we disagree. It knows we fight. We have competing interests. We get angry. And I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes 2 Jews will be at the same event and then give different versions of the event that just happened. And the Torah knows that sometimes when 2 people think they are right, there needs to be a neutral party who can sit between them and say, let's figure out the truth of what actually happened. Let's figure out how to achieve justice. And that's what a judge does. That's why judges are so important. The book of Deuteronomy is actually obsessed, I think, with this concept of judges. It discusses judges and the law at great length over and over and over. Why? Well, a judge is someone we entrust with the extraordinary power to decide between 2 competing claims, which means a judge has to listen carefully, distinguish between facts and excuses, resist their own personal feelings, and sometimes be willing to say to someone, you are wrong. This is why the Torah immediately warns our judges, do not show partiality in judgment. It tells them, do not favor the rich person. You can't even favor the poor person. Don't favor your friends. Don't favor any person you happen to like. A judge has to be able to say that the truth matters more than my feelings for you. And I think that's the reason Judge Judy became such a phenomenon. It's amazing. For 30 years now, millions of Americans have voluntarily sat down and watched a Jewish woman from Brooklyn listen to people's arguments. They sit and they watch and they decide who is lying and who is telling the truth. Peak entertainment. But why? Because there's something deeply satisfying about watching someone establish order in this very chaotic world. Friends, you know this. People lie. People make excuses. They take advantage of one another. I mean, none of you, but people. And then Judge Judy says, get to the point. You're wasting my time. And eventually she says, case dismissed. And we eat it up. We love it because we want to believe that there is such a thing as accountability, that there's a difference between right and wrong, and that somebody is willing to stand up and say so. That is precisely what the Torah is doing in Parshat Shoftim. When it commands us to appoint judges, the Torah understands that a just society does not just happen automatically. We need people willing to pursue the truth, enforce standards, make difficult judgments, even when those judgments are unpopular. But there's a big difference between judgment and justice. Judgment is easy. Justice is hard. Judgment says, I already know what kind of person you are. While justice says, let me hear what actually happened. Judgment says, I don't like you. Justice says, your dignity and your rights still matter. And this is where the story of Judge Judy's grandfather becomes so powerful. She watched him take those stairs for years, thinking that he did it to punish himself. But at some point, I think she realized that justice is never simply just about punishment. It's about accountability and taking responsibility for what you have done. Friends, that brings us directly to where we are now. Because the other day we entered the Hebrew month of Elul, the season when we begin preparing ourselves to stand before the ultimate judge. Rosh Hashanah is coming, Yom Kippur is coming, and soon we will begin to imagine that God is sitting in judgment over our lives. Now, during the year, we are the judges of other people. We know exactly who owes us an apology. We know exactly who behaved badly, who was selfish, and who needs to change. But Elul asks us to turn the courtroom around and become willing to examine ourselves. We're supposed to inquire, how did I treat the people I love this past year? Did I keep my promises? Did I tell the truth? Did I apologize when I was wrong? Did I use my power responsibly? Did I judge other people fairly? In Elul, our tradition asks us to judge ourselves honestly while still believing that we can. So in this new Hebrew month, instead of asking who is guilty, perhaps we should ask ourselves, what is mine that I can repair? Instead of asking who owes me an apology, we should ask, who am I supposed to apologize to? And instead of asking, was I right, we should ask, was I just? Friends, my prayer for us as we enter this high holiday season is that we remember that Jewish grandfather climbing those stairs one step at a time. Not because God wanted him to suffer, but because he wanted his repentance to be real for him. And perhaps that's what this season asks from us as well. Not perfection, but honesty. Not a promise that we will never make mistakes again, but the courage to say, I did that, I hurt you, I was wrong, and I need to change. And then instead of taking the shortcut, instead of taking the easy way out, instead of taking the elevator, let's take the stairs together. Shabbat Shalom.